That is one interesting island. 300 million years old. It was formed from volcanic ash from Mount Simpson in the Devonian period. During the separation of the supercontinent, that's when that island was formed. It gained layers of, in over 300 million years, it gained layers of soils and minerals and rock. And this is what we have today, that island. Grasses and plants grew, trees took over, and 9,000 years ago, where you see water now, that was dry grass valley, dry grassland, and basically a tundra-like grassland. The early peoples first stepped onto that landmark. It was a hill then, and they left some of their tools, their artifacts behind, and they were found. Now 6,000 years ago, it became an island. The great ice sheets of the last ice age, they melted, and all that water poured down from the north, and it filled in the Bay of Fundy. So whatever village sites, campsites that the Maritime Archaic, the Plano people, the Deborah Folsom people, their campsites were sunken under the Bay of Fundy. But some of their artifacts still surface on New Brunswick's shores today. The ocean tides bring them in. One just needs to know what to look for. Yes. 6,000 years ago, I believe it was the Paleo-Eskimo, then the Susquehanna, and then the ceramic period people that made use of that island. From 6,000 years ago to the time of the Susquehanna, the primary food source in the waters you see there were swordfish. And the swordfish were hunting all the other fish that inhabited these waters at that time. And the Maritime Archaic and the Susquehanna, they hunted the swordfish, the dolphin, the seals, and the whale. There were many whales, and the Susquehanna and Maritime Archaic had ocean-going canoes, ocean-going craft. They had to in order to go out there on the waters to hunt their prey. They hunted with harpoon and hook and line. Inland, on the shore, they hunted the caribou. The caribou were plentiful then. Now New Brunswick still has, not New Brunswick, Quebec still has a caribou population on the border of New Brunswick. It's on the Gaspé Peninsula. That's the last, one of the last surviving caribou herds that stemmed from the time of the Ice Age. from the time of the melting of the great ice caps or ice sheets. In Maine, the last caribou perished around 1940, and there is a reason for it, because European colonists cut down forests and gave deer a habitat, and the deer numbers increased, and eventually diseases or something crossed over from the deer to the caribou, and the caribou died. Now, the moose was the major game animal. I would say the moose was the major game animal for the last few thousand years. And I guess here the numbers are still strong, but during the heyday of the Susquehanna, go back to 3,000 years. During the heyday of those peoples, the Susquehanna and the Ceramic period people, the moose and the seal were hunted widely. And then there was the seafood, of course. Everybody loved their shellfish and their fish. It must have been an interesting landscape. For example, 5,000 years ago, it was tundra. And then it warmed up. Between 5,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago, it warmed up, and broadleaf trees took root. And by the time European navigators discovered this new world, there was deep, rich Acadian forest, 37 different kinds of trees comprised the Acadian forest. And by then, the moose and the caribou were the main inland prey animals for the archaic peoples, for the new Stone Age peoples that we'll call them, because the Stone Age is comprised of early Stone Age, middle Stone Age, and late Stone Age, or New Stone Age. That's when arrowheads and spear points went from large to small, then refined, and the archaic Maliseet and Passamaquoddy that Champlain and his crew encountered, they were the Ceramic period. Their points were well refined. They knew how to make fish weirs, and they knew how to make points for spearing moose, deer, caribou, points for spearing large fish. It must have been a very interesting world. I sort of wish I could go back in time and see it for myself. I can only do that if I incorporate it into a book that I'm writing. Then I can let my imagination run wild. But I'm sure the reality would be far greater than whatever I could ever imagine. I'm just waiting for the tide to go down some so that I can maybe get to film some seal, take a walk on the beach, maybe find a fossil or an artifact, film some ducks or herons. I hope for the heron. I love those great blue herons. That would have been something to see an ancient people going out to chase marlin or swordfish, going out to hunt, to harpoon swordfish in a big wooden dugout created by stone axes and fire. That would have been, it would have been a feat. They would have had to burn the tree down at the base and keep the fire from rising upward. And when the tree was finally felled, they would burn one long section, and then they would hollow that out with fire and stone axes. The axes and awls made of slate were probably the material that they used. If you go down to Texas or on the floodplains of the U.S. East Coast, below the Appalachian Mountains, you will find a different style of early points, early Stone Age points, middle Stone Age points, and new Stone Age points. The chert or flint, chert and flint were used a great deal, but so were other stones. The granites and basalts, whatever stone that could be percussion knapped was used. And whatever stone could be rubbed into shape was used. But for the greater part of the early inhabitants during the Susquehanna period, Maritime Archaic period, they had slate, they rubbed slate into shape for knives and harpoon heads and awls. And if you went to Texas, you would find a whole different variety of materials used in their points. In the early Stone Age, men were hunting the Ice Age game, like the mammoth, the mastodon, etc. That was the days of the cave bear and the cave lion. I am just going to be quiet now and enjoy the view.